you guys were not. You were in. Actually, you were in our preseason.
I was in Portland as well.
I want to cover playoff hockey in Vancouver. I want the fans to enjoy and experience playoff hockey in Vancouver. I want the Canucks to win a Stanley Cup for this city.
And looking at Raptors Twitter right now, a fade for Cade. I feel like a lot of them would love to see him there. I mean, I'm not advocating for that, but I mean, I know that's big on Raptors Twitter minds these days.
There's a lot of Twitter warriors out there.
LA gave one out to Jared Goff, and they've already moved on.
Correct.
They didn't think that could work for them.
It's all good. It's in it. It's in the box.
It's in the box.
Perfect.
For the Unnamed Sports Show, here's your host, Joshua Griffith.
Hello, and welcome to the Unnamed Sports Show here on the Sports Talk Line Network, where we talk sports 24/7, 365. I am, of course, Joshua Griffith, your host every day. We don't have any other hosts. It's just me. And today on the show, I'm going to be talking some Major League Baseball. Have a fantastic guest this week, host of the Locked On Jays podcast, associate editor for Sportsnet, covers the Ryder Cup right now, play-by-play for Mississauga 960 AM radio, bylines on the undefeated Toronto Star, you name it. I mean, this episode is only so long, so I can't keep going on with my guest credentials. But Lucas Weiss is going to be joining me today, and we're going to be talking about all things Toronto Blue Jays baseball. They got 9 games left, depending on when you are watching this, and they need to win about 6 or 7 to get into the wild card. So we're going to discuss the Cardgate incident, the loss against Minnesota in the first game of the series. I'll look ahead to the next 3, look ahead to the rest of their season as things wrap up. But before we get to this awesome interview, you know what we got to do? We got to take care of those housekeeping. So hit that like button down at the bottom. Subscribe to the Sports Talkline YouTube channel if you don't already. Make sure to follow me on Twitter at Joshua Griffith0. And leave me a comment. What do you think of the Blue Jays season so far? Some of our other conversations, we touched on the Shohei Ohtani of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. MVP debate. So let me know what you think about that. And yeah, so without further ado, let's get right to this interview with Lucas Weiss. All right, so I'm welcoming back a friend of the show that you may have noticed in the opening intro. The Raptors clip is a little bit dated, so now I'll be able to update it. But I'm so happy to welcome back on the associate editor for Sportsnet, among many other things that I don't have as much time to talk about because it's only a 30-minute show, and I'll pretty much take it all up. Lucas Weiss. Lucas, thanks so much for being here today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Josh. Thanks so much for having me back. I'm loving the red, by the way. It's Tiger Sunday red, perfect for Ryder Cup weekend. So,
yes,
clearly, fitting that apparel, but really excited to be on as always.
Power shirt, right? I gotta bring my A game when I have you on. So,
thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Are you doing good? Staying safe, staying healthy, all that stuff still?
Oh yeah, man. I mean, look, things are starting to inch a little bit back to normality. I mean, today as we're recording on Friday, I mean, the Ontario Chief Medical Officer of Health is announcing capacity limit increases to Rogers Center and Scotiabank Arena. So that's always great. And I think for the fans to come back and to see their teams play, it's just going to be really, really, really exciting. So I'm really looking forward to the fall ahead in sports.
Well, and that's kind of what I brought you on for to talk about. It's late September and we have meaningful Blue Jays baseball. I couldn't be happier. Big Blue Jays fan. And every year, at this time we're watching other teams kind of push for those playoffs. Kind of a tough loss last night. Put them 1 game back of the Yankees for that second wild card spot, 3 back of the Boston Red Sox. Let's just start with a general question. What have you made of the Blue Jays season so far this year, Lucas?
Well, Josh, I think your point at the top is a good one. And that is, if you would ask me at the start of the season, on September 24th, 2021, where we're recording this episode, that we're only a game back of the AL wildcard spot, I'd say let's take it, because that's what every team wants, to be playing meaningful baseball in September. And that's what the Toronto Blue Jays are doing. It's been a bit of a conundrum of a season. I mean, I think the first half was defined, of course, by injuries and bullpen struggles and really underperformance for the guys that they have and the team that they currently have. I think the optimism certainly increased at the trade deadline. And when management made those trade deadline acquisitions, particularly getting Jose Barrios from Minnesota, it sent a signal that the Blue Jays are interested in winning now, especially the prospect capital that they gave up. Now, August was a rough month for sure. It didn't sort of follow the 2015 season right after the David Price deal, where they immediately just shot up the standings. It was a really rough August. And I remember those two series against Detroit. It felt like a nail in the coffin. But then September happened, and what a run it has been. So it's been a bit of a struggle the last couple of games, but to be in this position right now with the talent the Blue Jays have, it's still a long way to go. And I think it's going to come down to that final series against the New York Yankees in terms of where the Blue Jays end up, whether they're in the postseason or they're outside of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, you kind of mentioned the series with the Yankees, but right now they have the series at hand, no pun intended. But we have Lourdes Gurriel Jr. getting his hand stepped on by Randal Grichuk. Could Thursday's loss have been any more deflating for the Blue Jays?
Yeah, it felt like an avalanche, Josh, and really starting from prior to the game with the Ryan Borucki suspension happening. I mean, the card gate that occurred in Tropicana Field has sort of defined this team for the last week or so. I mean, and I said on the Locked On Jays podcast that it felt a bit blown out of proportion. I mean, obviously it needed to be reported on, and obviously it's very serious what Kevin Kiermaier did. But for me, I think clearly the Blue Jays were, as Sportsnet's Arash Madani reported, pissed off at what Kevin Kiermaier did, stealing that card. And it felt like the climax, if you will, it was Ryan Borucki planking Kevin Kiermaier. Now, sure, if it helped the Blue Jays, that's all good. But at the end of the day, you need wins. And it boils down to this, Josh. The Blue Jays right now have 85 wins. I think they need 6 or 7 more victories to be guaranteed in a wild card spot position. So as deflating as Thursday's loss is, look, you have 3 of your best pitchers going on the mound Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If you can win this series against Minnesota, it's setting up for the final 2 homestand series where, again, all you need to do is win 4 or 5 more games and you're in a playoff spot. The issue, though, is you want to feast on the teams that are currently out of it. I mean, it's one thing to lose to the Tampa Bay Rays, who are the best team record-wise in the American League. It's another thing to lose to a Minnesota Twins team that has nothing to play for. So that's what makes it deflating. I currently understand what Blue Jays fans are going through, but look, we're still playing meaningful September baseball, and that's all you can ask for from this ball club.
So 6-7 wins gets us to 91, 92 wins, which should probably be about the bar. And like you said, you know, if they can take care of business in the games that they have, it's kind of up to them. These games here, these 3 against Minnesota that they have remaining, I think are really important. You've mentioned it already. They have their guns going. We got Jose Barrios tonight, you know, Alek Manoah tomorrow or Saturday, depending on when you're listening to this, and then tight pants Robbie Ray on Sunday. So, I mean, these are big games, and especially with the bullpen getting a bit stretched out on Thursday night. How big do you think it is for Jose Barrios to put in at least 5 strong innings tonight?
It's huge, Josh, because the last couple of games, what we've seen from the Blue Jays is their starters haven't been able to get those 5 or 6 meaningful innings.
Yeah.
And that to me has set up the rest of this team, especially when the Jays have been successful this September. They've had the 5 or 6 strong innings where they haven't given up a lot of runs. And then that sets up bringing in a guy like Tim Meza, and then of course leading into Jordan Romano in the 9th inning to get the saves. The problem in the last couple games is that they've had to go to their depth pitching pieces like a Julian Merriweather or a Taylor Saucedo's now been optioned back to AAA. And then, of course, Thomas Hatch, who they thought was going to be healthy, there's clearly still something wrong with him as he left the game with hamstring discomfort. So they haven't been able to get the quality relief pitching when the starters don't do well. So that's where the Blue Jays are really in trouble, is when that happens, because I don't really know who else to go to. I mean, look, Anthony Castro was okay, but that was just for one start on against the Rays when the game was out of hand. So I think, to me, the keep up pitching, which has propelled them to this point, and I think they have a good chance. But I would argue, Josh, and maybe we'll talk about this in a bit, the hitting the last couple of games has been a bit concerning for me. And we saw in August when they went cold, that's what started the losing streak. So hopefully that doesn't happen again.
Yeah, and I listened to the Locked on Jays podcast episode that you did on Thursday, and that was something that you mentioned. I think they went 2 for 7 against the Twins yesterday with runners in scoring position, something like that. And
they did.
Yeah, and that was a big problem that we saw in that series against Detroit, in the series against the Washington Nationals, in games that they should have won. And if they don't make the playoffs of the wild card series, they're going to be looking back at those games and moments like this where they could have gotten 1 or 2 extra wins.
For sure. And I think the concern for me with the Blue Jays is we know how talented their offense is when they can click. And I mean, Vladdy gets going when Bo's on. Teoscar's had a great second half. And that's what makes the Lourdes Gurriel Jr. injury situation very concerning, because he's arguably been their best hitter in September. He tied on Thursday a franchise record for most RBIs in September with 30. But you can't ignore the numbers, Josh, when you look at this offense. I mean, 5.22 runs per game, an MLB best .793 OPS. So this is a team that can hit. But I think where the concern is if they become too reliant on the home run, rather than manufacturing ways to get on base, to get walks, to find ways to just rack up runs on the board. That's where I think I'm a little bit concerned with the Blue Jays, because they haven't been able to do that, particularly with runners in scoring position. And I said it last night, it sort of reminds me of 2015, where that was their Achilles heel in the end. I mean, in that ALCS against the Kansas City Royals, they went 3 for 28 in runners in scoring position. So they need to be able to be a lot more clutch, if you will, in those pressure moments where you need to cash in a run with runners in scoring position.
So I'm joined by Lucas Weiss here of Weiss Sports, Sportsnet, and many other things on the Unnamed Sports Show. Lucas, do you think that's a problem we're seeing right now with Major League Baseball, where it's just, I mean, I'm a fan of the bunting, of the strategy, of hit and runs, of moving the players over. Do you think that we're too far gone now? It's just that it's the home run. It seems to be a home run or a walk every other one. And maybe sometimes we get, a fun play.
Well, it's just how baseball is going in general. I mean, it's the analytics movement. And at the end of the day, people can qualm about it, but that's what front offices are doing right now. They're trying to figure out ways where a team can maximize the most amount of runs and find the ways to succeed the best way they can. And that's what they're doing. I mean, the fact of the matter is strikeouts are becoming more prevalent because hitters are just swinging for the fences. And then you're seeing those home run balls. I I would just like a little bit more variety in the game. I think that's what makes baseball really fascinating, when you have guys stealing bases, when you have guys not necessarily always hitting home runs, but hitting the opposite field to bring in certain runners. But that's the way baseball is going. And I just think at the end of the day, it's not going to change. So I think for the Blue Jays, though, again, they just better hope they get hot, because if the offense is cold, and we've seen this in the history of MLB postseasons where you have a dynamic offense, and because it's just such a short series, it goes cold, and then you have to rely on your pitching, and if you don't have good pitching, that's where it really kills you in the playoffs. So I know that dynamic offenses are often the headlines. They often capture the tweets and the video highlights, and it's great. But when you want to win those critical postseason games, it's the pitching that really helps you. And the Jays have had good pitching. I mean, but the issue is when they get to the bullpen. And we've seen that all season long. And hopefully it doesn't come back to bite them in big games in the postseason if they make it there.
Yeah, let's hope not. And, you mentioned Blue Jays pitching. We've talked about some of the starters that are coming up so far. Somebody that we haven't talked about, who's basically the ace of the Blue Jays starters, Hyun-Jin Ryu. He hasn't really had the best last couple of months, seems to be dropping off, got put on the 10-day IL. What are we expecting from him when he comes back? I think scheduled for a Tuesday start versus the Yankees, but what do you expect to see out of him?
Well, it's interesting because while he is on track to make that Tuesday start, I mean, on Sportsnet 590, The Fans Baseball Central, Jeff Blair and Kevin Barker were talking about that, talking with people in the organization, that may not happen, right? So they're hoping that isn't the case. They're hoping that's that doesn't happen, because you don't want another bullpen game. Because we saw what Ross Stripling was against the Tampa Bay Rays, and it wasn't a pleasant sight. Look, I mean, Hyun-Jin Ryu is a finesse pitcher. We all know that. He's not going to bring the maximum full velocity. He's going to pitch. And the thing about Ryu is it's all about command. And his command just hasn't been there. You see a lot of his balls hitting over the middle of the plate, not finding his spots, and it's just allowing opposing hitters to hit on him, hit the long ball, all that stuff. So, look, the neck issue now, the Blue Jays are saying, isn't necessarily connected with the forearm issues that Ryu may have been having at the start of the season. I don't know how true that is or not. That's what they're telling us. But at the end of the day, Hyun-Jin Ryu right now is your fifth best starter, given his performance. I mean, and that was something I don't think anyone could have predicted at the start of the season, just given Ryu's contract and whatnot and his pedigree. But I am going to be optimistic, though, because I think you need to give Ryu the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. He does have that pedigree. He was at one point a couple of years ago with the Dodgers, the second best ERA in the National League. If he finds it and makes that adjustment, as Blue Jays manager Charlie Montoyo says, I think he'll be great. But he hasn't had it, and it is concerning for the Blue Jays team trying to push for the playoffs.
So another pitcher, and we kind of already talked about this a little bit. You brought it up, but something that I really enjoyed on your Locked On Jays podcast about the Ryan Brucke incident and Cardgate. You mentioned Arash Madani relaying messages kind of the players, that there was two sides. Some people were happy that it happened. Other people were like, oh, we've turned the page. And you kind of asked if it was the right thing for the Blue Jays to do it in the moment. I was really fascinated by that. I was wondering if you could elaborate for my audience on that point.
Yeah, look, I mean, my opinion is I feel like there are certain situations in baseball that warrant retaliation. And I use the example in my own podcast of the August 2015 series against the Kansas City Royals, which was very intense and sort of, birthed that rivalry that year between those two teams, where in one of the games, the Royals, player threw at one of the Jays batters, and then the Jays retaliated. It just became a real mess. But that's when I think retaliation is warranted to a degree, just because one team is harming your own batters and vice versa. But in this situation, I mean, as many more experienced baseball minds have said on the broadcast, it's not like the card reveals everything there about the Jays strategy. I mean, it does provide some information for sure. I'm not trying to diminish it, but it's not all encompassing. And the Blue Jays could just adjust the strategy. So look, I think my opinion doesn't necessarily matter for the Blue Jays. Some of them thought it needed to be done. I mean, because they were upset. They're upset that this is a Rays team, given their pedigree, that they're just going to find, unique ways to, in their minds, cheat to win. And let's face it, sports teams are paranoid after the sign stealing scandal with the Astros and Deflategate with the New England Patriots about giving away any secrets that would lead to a competitive advantage for the opposing team. But I just think there were other ways to handle this, i.e. winning. At the end of the day, it comes back to you need 5 or 6 wins, 6 or 7 wins to get into the playoffs. And if this makes you feel good for a day, but you still lost, right? You still lost to a team, and there's no guarantee that you'll even face the Rays again this year. So look, I just think that the Blue Jays thought it was a problem. They dealt with it. Now it's time, though, to close that book and get back to what's really at stake here, which is trying to get your team into the postseason. But the fact that Arash reported that there was a little bit of a divide, some players thought this was warranted, others thought we're moving on, isn't necessarily the best thing to me. And it to me shows you that sometimes you stymie your opponent in that situation through the actions on the field rather than troll petty stuff like this.
Well, and we're kind of seeing it in that Major League Baseball in general, with that kind of divide on how teams decide and how players decide they want to go about things. Perfect example, we had a home run the other day, and the batter decides to do a little Euro step. Pitcher, okay, that's fine. I'm just going to strike your ass out, and I'm going to do a little Euro step myself. And we seem to have such a split between an old school mentality of baseball that, no, you can't do that, I'm just going to plunk you in the back, as opposed to, no, I'm just going to show you up in the sport. Like you said, at the end of the day, the final box score is really what counts.
Oh, for sure. And that example that you just mentioned with the Marlins and the Nationals was exactly what I said. I mean, you just show them up with a strikeout, right? That's the best way to stymie what the opposing team is trying to do. Look, I mean, this extends beyond baseball. I mean, hockey has the code, if you will, and every time there's a big hit, then there's a fight. I mean, this conversation gets brought up, and I just think, though, this particular situation just didn't warrant that response. If the Rays were going at, were throwing balls, planking Blue Jays hitters, I think that could warrant it, just because, I mean, it warrants it. But for me, I just think we need to move away from these grand responses to very, to me, minute things. Of course, I'm not trying to diminish what Kevin Kiermaier did. It's bad. He should have given it back right away. But I just think that it got blown out of proportion. And I think that now, again, the Blue Jays need to find a way to win ball games, because right now there's a lot bigger issues than that card game. It's the fact that they're not cashing in with runners in scoring position. They're not getting quality starts from their starting pitchers. And they're now one game out of a playoff spot, looking up to the Yankees and the Red Sox. That's what they need to focus on rather than external stuff like Cardgate.
I got such a kick out of Cardgate by everyone's reactions to it. My thoughts on it are, if you can't remember how to pitch to 15 players, then are you, come on. You really need a card for 15 players that you might see? I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I see it in the NFL too. When these guys have these massive armbands on with all the plays, like back in my day when we used to play sports, we just had to remember it. And now it's like, no, here you go. Here's your cheat sheet. And if somebody happens to get our cheat sheet, we're going to be really mad about it, even though we've put it out there. Like I can, sometimes I'm like watching broadcast and I can see the plays and the numbers on their arms. I'm like, okay, well, that kind of seems a little bit silly, but yeah, like you said, I want to just move on from it. I thought it was hilarious. Gave me a good laugh, but the Blue Jays need to do some winning. So I'm joined by Lucas Weiss here on the Unnamed Sports Show. Couldn't have you on without asking you, Shohei Ohtani or Vladimir Guerrero Jr., who's going to win the American League MVP?
Oh, getting right to the takes there, Josh.
Oh, yeah, I had to ask.
I love it. I love it. Look, so on my first episode of Locked On Jays as co-host, I said it was over and it was Shohei Ohtani. I mean, and that's not to diminish what Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has done this season. I mean, the fact of the matter is he's still in the running for the Triple Crown, which hasn't been done since 2012. The fact of the matter is he's doing this on a competitive team that's pushing for the playoffs. But let's face it, what Shohei Ohtani is doing hasn't been done since Babe Ruth. The fact is his WAR is still leading the majors, meaning that he just has this resounding impact, even on a team that's far out of playoff contention. And I know that may hurt, maybe some people think that hurts his chances, but he's still helping this team in a huge way. And for someone to be able to pitch as well as he is, I mean, if he were a starting pitcher with minimum 20 starts, he'd have the fourth best ERA in the American League. So, look, Vlad has certainly made things interesting. I think what hurts Vlad ultimately is that there are other guys on that team, the Blue Jays, that are doing amazing things hitting. I mean, Marcus Semien has over 40 home runs. Teoscar Hernandez, I mean, I said this on my podcast, he's sort of the forgotten rising star right now because he's leading in RBIs and just showing his just incredible transformation into becoming one of the best hitters in baseball. So I think that hurts Vlad just because there's other players on the team. They're doing, very, very well. So look, I think Ohtani has it, but that's not to diminish the great season Vlad's had. Because look, coming into this season, I remember people talking about, is Vlad going to be even in the majors? Is Vlad going to be making a stint with the minor leagues? Because he hadn't reached that potential that so many people thought of him when he entered the big leagues in 2019. But that's classic people just overreacting. They don't know baseball because baseball takes a long time to get to where you need to be. And we finally seen the star arrive. That is Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And he's going to be around for quite some time, but it's going to be Ohtani this year. I mean, I'd be very, very shocked if he's not holding the MVP honors.
Well, I'm going to play a little devil's advocate on this one then. But doesn't that kind of set up the fact that anytime he has a decent season pitching and a great season at the plate, set him up for, we've never seen this before. Oh, well, he's done it. Doesn't it kind of set up the precedent? Or do you think that just this one-off and we can get rid of it. Now we've seen this unicorn that he is, and we can move on. Next year will just be a regular MVP again.
I would look, I think for me, if he just does even better numbers, right? Like,
I guess
like
you gotta
if
give it
he,
to him again. Yeah.
like, if he's leading in batting average or home runs and leading or number 2 or number 3 in ERA, like if he just continue, like if he just has better numbers, and let's face it, if Vlad's off a little bit, I mean, who knows, right?
Yeah.
So I think, look, I mean, sure, I see your point, but I still think that the MVP award's still going to go on. And I think it all is part of the equation, right? And this is clearly a special case where, like, look, if he's not pitching particularly well that year and hitting really well, but then Vlad's having this season, I mean, probably they're going to give it to Vlad just because of just the number of categories. But I just think that you can't diminish what he's done. And this isn't just, to me, an honorary award. I think the numbers that he's put together on both sides are warranted of an MVP. And to me, I think he'll win it this year. And if he just keeps up the numbers again, I see him winning multiple MVPs because he's a really transformational player.
You know, and you mentioned his pitching numbers too. So it's not like he's, batting at a high level and then pitching at a mediocre level. He's doing both at a supremely high level. So I just wanted to play a little devil's advocate with you and have some fun there.
No, I mean, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate, look, it's becoming more of a dynamic conversation. We'll see, though. I mean, Vlad, the last couple series, where has he been, right?
Yeah.
So, right? So I think the next couple weeks are going to be big. I mean, I think if he wins the Triple Crown, it'll be a conversation. But look what Teoscar Hernandez is doing, right? He's still hanging on to that RBI lead. So it'll be very interesting to see. But great season for baseball, though.
Yeah.
In terms of the young stars really capturing the attention and the headlines, from Ohtani to Guerrero to Tatis and many others. It's a fun time to be a baseball fan.
It is a fun time to be a baseball fan. And I think that if Vladdy can get to about 50 home runs, like you said, if he amps it up for the last, 9 games here, if he can get to 50 and the Blue Jays make it into the wild card, I think we're going to see maybe a couple people take a second guess to it, their vote. But hey, who knows? I'd be happy either way. It's just a fun time for baseball.
No doubt. No doubt. I think he's going to get votes. I'd be shocked if it's unanimous. I don't think it's going to be unanimous. I think Vlad will get votes, but I just think Ohtani's locked it up for a while right now, and it'd be foolish. I know some people were saying, it might be a good little investment opportunity to bet on Vlad getting the MVP. I don't think so. I mean, I put your money somewhere else. That's what I say.
I think Tim McAuliffe from Tim and Friends was saying that he put money on Shohei Ohtani at the beginning of the year, but he got nervous about a month ago and sold out on his bet. So he probably should have kept that one. Lucas, thank you so much for joining me today and chatting some baseball. I mean, we pretty much only covered one division, but I didn't think we would stray too far off the Jays. So.
Oh, Josh, always a pleasure, man, and looking forward to coming back on with you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for joining me. That's Lucas Weiss from Weiss Sports. What are you working on right now? I know you're covering probably the Ryder Cup 2 that's going on. Blue Jays doing Locked on Jays podcast. Mississauga 960, is that the station? 960.
Yep. You're absolutely right. So yeah, I mean, doing a lot of freelance stuff. I mean, Sportsnet's, being an associate editor and writer there is capturing a lot of my days, and then play-by-play with Saga 960 is fantastic. Ryder Cup, like you said, is this weekend, so I've been doing some content there. Yeah, just doing a lot of different things. I mean, I have a lot of feature stories coming up that I'm working on, so it's going to be exciting.
Awesome to hear. So everybody can follow Lucas. His Twitter will be down in the bottom in the description. It's at Weiss Sports. So you'll be able to check it out down below. Lucas, thank you so much for joining me and have a great day.
Likewise, Josh, take care.
Cheers. All right, so that wraps things up with my conversation with Lucas Weiss. As you can tell, I had an absolute blast. Always so fun when I have him on the show. Started interacting with Lucas probably about 2.5 years ago. We're both big Timmins citizens, now Timmins friends, but started interacting about sports and our love of sports. And it's just so fantastic to have him on because he can chat pretty much everything. If you noticed, our last episode was about basketball. I think I brought him on the first time to chat some golf. So Lucas is always a great guest. Make sure to follow him at Weiss Sports. It'll be down at the bottom here. Pretty much for everything sports related. So he did some great coverage of the Olympics as well for CBC. So that pretty much wraps it up for today. I'm really glad that you guys joined and were able to check out my conversation with Lucas. Make sure to check out the Blue Jays games as they look to move into October and make that wild card spot. So it would be a lot of fun if the Blue Jays could be in the playoffs, and maybe the Mariners, if people are Mariners fans. Sorry we didn't get to them today, but 30 minutes on Blue Jays kind of had to wrap things up. But maybe we'll see the Mariners in the playoffs too, but I doubt it. So thanks so much, and make sure to like and subscribe down at the bottom to the YouTube channel if you didn't already. Leave me a comment, let me know what you think, and then if you're listening to this on podcast, make sure to give me a rating. 5-star rating is always the best, of course. Leave a review, a comment, all of that jazz. Make sure to tune in next week. Lots of sports coming in October. It's a great time to be a sports fan. So remember to love sports, all sports.